Yeah. Put this bench beside him, said his wife, and use it as a step. What his wife gave advice, my dear, put this bench beside him, beside this horse, and use it as a step. Use it as a step. Who gave advice? The wife gave the advice to the porter. Even with the help of the bench of the porter, even with the help of the bench, the porter had much difficulty climbing onto the horseback. See, even with the help of the bench also, the porter had much difficulty to climb onto the horseback. Why? Because the horse was very high, so it was very big. He was unable to, even he used the bench also, he was unable to, or he was difficult to climb onto the horseback. When he was finally seated, when he finally sat on that horse, he found that the saddle was very slippery. Saddle means, what do you mean by saddle? Saddles are nothing but keeping legs, you know. For example, it's a horse. Think it's a horse. So here the saddles will be there. To keep legs here, and the other side also keep leg. No, that is a saddle. Okay. He found that the saddle was very slippery. Slippery means slipping. When he kept that, it was slipping. So what he thought? What he said? Please tie my feet to the strips, dear wife. He gave advice to his wife. My dear wife, please tie my feet to the strips. Strips means metal rings. Strips means here metal rings. Strips, which means metal rings. Okay. He gave advice to his wife. Said the porter too. Otherwise, I shall certainly fall off. If you won't tie it, certainly I would fall off from that horse. His wife found some rope and bound her husband's feet tightly to the strips. What he did? So his wife found some rope. Whose wife? The porter's wife found some other rope and bound it. Bound means tied her husband's feet tightly to the strips. To the strips he tied it. Who tied that? The wife only tied it. Then passed the rope underneath of the horse. So here is one leg, here is one leg, no? And she took that rope and even it tied it under this. Here also tied it, two legs here, and two from here to here. She kept the rope and tied it underneath of the horse and tied it two strips. Two strips she tied it together. She also passed a length of rope around the porter's waist. She also passed around the waist of porters. Wherein the waist of the porters, she tied the rope around the porter's waist. Waist means this part. She tied it and tied him to the saddle. And again she tied him to the saddle. Now please tie my hands to his neck, said the porter. What next? What the porter said next? My dear, please, you can tie my hands to his neck. Hands to his neck means horse neck like that. Tie it. He gave the advice to his wife. Meanwhile, the big brown horse was impatiently pawing his hoofs on the ground. What happened? Meanwhile, the big brown horse was impatiently having no patience. It is pawing. Pawing means legs, no? See that what we can say that even you can cows, no? Before when they want to run it, they pause it with the legs on the ground. In the same manner, it also pawing his hoofs on the ground. It was doing it. When the porter's wife tried to pass another rope around his neck, when the porter's wife she wants to try to pass the another rope around his neck. Around his neck means that who is that brown horse neck? So what he did? The horse suddenly jumped free. The horse suddenly jumped free means jumped from the stable, went off. It galloped. Galloped means jumped. Galloped means jumped. Galloped means jumped. They jumped from that, galloped out of the stable. Jumped out of the stable with the porters hanging like a sack of a rice on its back. When it's jumped from that out of the stable, how the porter was looking, he was hanging like a sack of rice. When we keep sack of rice on that, how he was hanging the same manner, he was hanging from that horse. Only the ropes kept him from crashing to the ground. Only the ropes, no, the ropes kept him as a from the crashing. Crashing means falling to the ground. Falling from the ground means this ropes only made him to not to fall on that ground. The porter held tightly to the horse neck. Meanwhile, what did the porter held the tightly to the horse neck and prayed to all the gods to save his life. He was praying to all the gods to save his life. After galloping through the quiet streets, the horse crashed through the city gate and raced across the open field. What happened? After galloping, jumping through the quiet streets, he went to the quiet streets. The horse crashed to the city gate. It crossed the city gate and the raced across the open field, and it went afterwards open field. It leaped over. It means leaped means jumped. Lept means jump. Lept means jumped over the fences and streams. Over the fences, over the streams, it jumped and began to head for the enemy. And after last, it began to head for the enemy. Enemy means enemies where the enemies were there. Towards the enemy's camp, it was coming towards the enemy camp. When the porters realized where they were going, the porter now he understood that where they both were going towards. He understood that. He realized that. Who realized that? The porter realized. He tried harder than ever to stop the horse. He tried harder than ever. He tried to stop the horse. But what happened? He pulled wild on the reins. He pulled widely, means very tightly. Pulled on the reins. Reins means paggal, no? Reins. Reins means long leather bands held by a horse rider. Okay, leather. Okay, leather bands held by a horse rider. So that is a rein. It was full very widely, very tightly. That rein, but it was no use. Even though it was no use, the horse galloped on. It jumped on that place. When they passed young tree, the porter grabbed a branch. When they passed through the young tree, the porter grabbed a branch. He was grabbed means caught a branch. But the horse did not stop. Even though he caught the branch of the tree, the horse did not stop it. Instead, the tree was pulled out of the ground. Instead, what happened? The tree was pulled out of the ground. Now you can see that how he was catching. You can see very easily. Even he wanted to stop him, that horse. He caught the branch of the tree, but what happened? It came with the roots. It came out of the roots, pulled out of the ground. A sentry means a soldier from the enemy camp. So the porter galloping towards the camp, jumping towards the camp of the enemy. He saw that. Who's that? Sentry means enemy soldier. He saw that he was coming towards the camp with a tree in one hand, and in his rein in the other hand. Rein was in the other hand, and one hand tree was there on that other hand. That he saw that. Who saw that? Sentry means a soldier. So that must be the general who captured a tiger with his bare hands, he thought. What the enemy soldier thought that that must be general. That must be general of the army. There was a person who captured a tiger. Who captured a tiger with his bare hands. With his bare hands. Not in that he thought. Who thought that the sentry of the sentry means nothing but soldier. Thought it. Enemy soldier. Now he has uprooted a tree with only one hand. Now he is what he uprooted? Uprooted a tree with only one hand. That he saw that. He is not an ordinary man. He is a giant. He is not a ordinary man. He is a giant. Giant is a monster. Very big person. Very strong person. Run, run. Save yourself. Run, run. Save yourself. He said to his soldiers. Who soldiers? The enemy soldiers. Enemy soldiers only told to those soldiers. Save your life. The famous tiger general is coming at the head of large army to attack us. So what he said that? That enemy soldier, the famous tiger general, mentioned tiger general means tiger means he called the tiger. That's the reason he mentioned. Tiger general is coming at the head of large army to attack us. To attack us. So he has the strength of a giant. He has a strength of a giant. He's coming towards us. He's going to kill us. So save your life. He has uprooted a tree with one hand. He has uprooted a tree with one hand. Who said that? The enemy soldiers said to those soldiers. The frightened soldiers fled. The frightened soldiers fled away. Fled means went away. Okay. Their king was left by himself in his tent. Only everyone went off. Only one his king was left by himself in his tent. Only the king was there. He was left in that in his tent. Hurriedly, he wrote a letter. That king, no enemy king, hurriedly wrote a letter, begging for peace. Begging for peace. Peace means Shantina. Begging for peace and apologizing for attacking the country. Apologizing means saying sorry towards that country, towards this Portus country. He was asking sorry for attacking the country. He left this letter in the tent. He left the letter in his tent. Then he jumped on his horse and followed his soldiers. Then what? And jumped on his horse and he followed the soldiers. Who followed that? The enemy king followed his soldiers, and he went away from that. Even the king also went away from that place. When the fortress brown horse reached the deserted camp, it stopped. When this Portus brown horse, when it reached the deserted camp, deserted means empty camp, then it stopped it. Who stopped that? That brown horse stopped in that enemy camp. With the shaking hands, the Portus untied his feet. With the shaking hands, he untied the feet and fell on the ground. And he fell down on the ground. When he looked around, he was surprised. When he looked around, he was such a way surprised to find the camp empty. He was surprised to find this camp, enemy camp was empty. He looked into the king's tent and found the letter. He looked into the king's palace, king's tent, and he found a letter. The puzzled means the confused porter walked back to the city with a letter in his pocket. He took the letter, he kept it in his pocket and left that place. He went to his wife, directly went to his wife and gave her the letter. He gave the letter to her. Dear wife, after giving the letter, he said, Dear wife, he said, never in my life will ride a horse again. What he was saying that, dear wife, never in my life will I ride a horse again. And never ride a horse again. Who said that? The porter said to his wife. Why? Because already he experienced that horse. Please take this letter to our king and tell him that that the enemy has run away. Please take this letter to our king and tell him that the enemy has run away from that place. Just to give the information to the king. He said, I am going to bed. So he was going to bed. His wife ran towards the palace. After when he went to bed, his wife ran towards the palace with a letter. When the king read the letter, he was full of praise for his new general. When the king read the letter, he was full of praise for his new general. Who was the new general here? The porter was the new general. He asked the porter's wife where her husband was. He asked that his wife where her husband was. So what she said, my husband is tired. What said that? My husband is very tired, Your Majesty, she said. Then the servants has put him to bed. Answered the wife respectfully. She gave the answer. The servants only have to put him to bed. Who gave answer? The porter's wife who gave the answer respectfully. Let him rest today. Tell him to come tomorrow to receive this reward. The king said. What the king said? Let him rest today. Tell him to come tomorrow to receive his awards. Rewards or awards. Next morning, the porter went to the king's palace. Immediately, the next morning, the king went to king's palace. No, sir. The porters went to king's palace. He left the black horse in the stable. And walked to the palace with his wife. So, next day itself, he went to the palace and there he left this brown horse in the stable and then walked towards the palace with his wife. He went to his wife. The streets were filled with the cheering crowds. So everyone was filled with the cheers crowds, means cheering up. They had all heard about his bravery action. All people, they heard that his bravery action. Look how humble he is, they said to each other. Everyone who were there in that, look how humble he is, they said to each other. Each and everyone said to each other. An other man would ride to the palace on a horse, but he is walking like an ordinary man. One of them said that any other man would ride to the palace by taking the horse and ride on the horse and come to the palace. But he was walking like an ordinary man. Look how humble he is. He is truly humble and brave man. Truly is humble and a brave man, he said. The king rewarded the porter so well that he did not need to work again. The king rewarded the porter so well and he did not work again. So the country was peaceful for the rest of his life. And porter never rode a horse again. The porter never rode a horse again. Why? Because there is no need to work for it. Okay. So thank you all.